Okay, yeah. So in any programming language, no, like in the backend technologies and all, when you're working with backend technologies like Python, Java, .NET and all, so OOPS concept is very common. So OOPS concept, object-oriented programming structures. So these are very common actually. In every programming language, you come across these OOPS concepts. Okay, so the concepts are all the same in each and every programming language, but the syntax might vary. Okay, like if you want to define a class in Python, you use some syntax, and if you want to define class in Java, you use a different syntax there, right? But see, oops concept is always complex if you don't know the exact concept of all the oops actually. So if you understand the concepts properly, then it becomes very easy for you, and you can write down the classes properly. Yeah, so by looking at the terminology and all, people think that oops is a little bit complex and all, but no. So these are very easy. Oops is very easy. You need to follow some rules to do that oops, that's it. So in order to understand the rules and all, no, you need to first understand the terminology present in the oops concepts and all. So in today's session, we'll try to create classes, and we try to create objects to it. Okay, and then we try to instantiate that objects, and we try to save that attributes or the data members or whatever it is into some variables and all. So we'll look into that today. Okay, so introduction. So in this session, we will learn how to create and instantiate classes. That means we will learn to create a class, and then we'll learn to use that class. Okay, before that we'll learn some terminology in oops. So we need to understand the terminology and all. So is my screen visible, guys? Like, do you want me to zoom it, or is it okay?
Sir, little zoom it, sir.
Okay. Okay, is this fine?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. See, so here first, we'll learn the definitions, technical definitions of all the OOPS terms like class, objects, or what is a class variable, what is a data member. Like we have like few definitions actually. So before entering into the code and all, no, we need to understand, like we need to define the terms. We'll have a quick understanding about these terms by looking at the definitions, and then I'll show them all in a practical way in Python. Okay, so class. So what do you mean by a class? A class is user-defined prototype for an object. In the last session, I was telling you this only. So a user-defined prototype for an object that defines set of attributes that characterize any object of the class. Okay, what do you mean by this? See, user-defined prototype in the sense we are defining it. A user is defining it. That defines a set of attributes. So attributes in the sense that I told you, like attributes might be the parameters or the arguments. We call parameters and arguments in the functions, right? In the same way, here we call those parameters and arguments as data members. Remember this term, data members. Okay, so data members can be class variables or instance variables. It might be anything, and methods also. So inside the class, now we define methods also. Methods in the sense functions which are present inside a class are called as methods. That's it. Remember that. Okay. Whenever I tell about methods and all, now you think that it's a function only. Okay, accessed via dot notation. By using dot notation, now we access the class methods or class variables or anything. So inside the class, if you want to access something, now we use dot notation. I'll show you how what is dot notation, how to use it and all when we code something in Python. Okay. Before that, yeah, we'll learn the terminologies. And the next thing, class variable. Okay, a variable that is shared by all the instances of a class. Okay, what do you mean by this? So see, it's like a local variable and global variable. So last time, for understanding the scope of variables, we have defined local and global variables. So local variables are something where you can access only inside that function. So global variables are something where you can access throughout the program, right? Outside also you can access them, right? So in the same way, class variables are something where that can be accessed through all the instances of the class. I mean, through all the instances and throughout the class program, no? The class variable can be passed or accessed anywhere you want inside the class. Okay, class variables are defined within a class, but outside any of the class methods. Yeah, so yeah, class variables are defined in the class, but outside of the methods present inside the class. So you're not going to define class variables inside any method. You need to define class variables outside the methods only. Methods in the sense the functions. Okay, class variables are not used as frequent as instance variables are. Okay, class variables we use it, but not that frequently we use it. But instance variables, while creating an instance of a class, we need those variables definitely, because the entire class works with the instance variables only. Okay, and the third definition is data member, a class variable or instance variable that holds data associated with a class and its objects. So data member is nothing but it's a class variable or instance variable when it holds some data. It holds some data, right? So whenever we want to access the class, we pass some data into the class. That means the data whatever you're passing into the class will be stored in the form of a variable or in the form of an object or something, right? So that is associated with the class and its objects. So those are called as data members. Clear? Yeah, I guess that's clear. Yeah, and here we have a few more definitions. That is, one is function overloading. So the assignment of more than one behavior to a particular function. Okay, consider this like for function overloading, so more than one behavior to a particular function. Like if you have created a function, you have applied some logic into it, and you have created one more function with the same name, and you applied a different logic into it. Okay, so it depends now. So where you are calling it. So while calling it the function, it might overload, right? So it might overload or override, something will happen. So what happens if you use the same name to a function and you use it again and again? What happens? So at the
Sir,
time,
your voice is breaking, sir. It's not good.
okay, is it audible now, guys? Hello.
Yes,
No,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir,
Yeah.
audible, sir.
Okay, good. Yeah. So what I'm saying is, see, if I give of if I've taken two functions, for example, if I've taken two functions and I've given the same name for the functions. So what does the system do then? So it is called as function overloading. What happens? What happens exactly when this function overloading is done? Okay, 1 minute, guys. This is the vegetable vendor. Okay, yeah. So that's what a function overloading is. Okay, so next one is instance variable. So a variable that is defined inside a method and belongs only to the current instance of a class. Remember this. So inside the class, now definitely we are going to use all the what do we call, all methods only. Okay, so instance variable is something that is defined inside a method and belongs only to the current instance of the class. That means whenever you're calling the class, that becomes an instance of the class. So that is the first instance. If you're calling the class with different data members, I mean with different values to it, that becomes a second instance of the class. Okay, so whenever you're calling these, the instance variables store only the particular current instance. Whenever you're calling the class now, so it stores that instance variables only. That's what it meant. Okay, and inheritance. Inheritance is the transfer of the characteristics of a class to other classes that are derived from it. See, you can simply pass the characteristics of one class to other class. So that solves the problem, right? So like when previously, by using functions, you can't directly push your variables or something into a different function directly, right? So here in inheritance, what we can do is, so we can have the inheritance, it transfers all the characteristics. Not characteristics, nothing but it might be instance variables or it might be methods, anything. So we can transfer the characteristics of one class, of class A to class B. So the class A becomes the parent class now. So class B becomes our child class, because parent class A, the characteristics of class A is being used in the class B. Okay, likewise you can transfer the characteristics to any number of classes. Any number of classes you can transfer the characteristics. Like you can create a parent child, or parent child, subchild, like that also you can create. You can, I mean, transfer the characteristics also, right? So when the inheritance topic comes, I'll show you how to write the code in Python and all. Mean till then, just like check the definition. That's it. Okay, instance, an individual object of a certain class. Okay, an individual object of a certain class. That means you, whenever you are calling the class, that becomes an instance. I told you, an object that belongs to a class circle, for example, is an instance of the class circle. Okay, an object that belongs to a class circle. Object, in a sense, we create objects by passing the data members into the class. So that becomes the instance of the class circle. It's that simple. Okay, instantiation. The creation of an instance of a class is called as instantiation. That's it. I mean, the calling of the class. That's it. You can tell that by calling the class, it creates an instance, and this entire process is called instantiation. Good. Yeah. And method, a special kind of function that is defined in a class definition. Okay, remember this. So it's a function only, but yeah. So once you declare functions inside the class, no, those are called as methods. Okay, and object, a unique instance of a data structure that is defined by its class. An object comprises both data members, class variables, and instances, and methods also. So whatever you are creating inside the class, or in Python generally, so everything is like denoted as an object only, and everything is saved in the form of objects only. So whenever you're calling the instance of a class, or whenever you're creating a class, you're creating the methods and all, everything will be converted into those objects. Okay, and operator overloading. So the assignment of more than one function to a particular operator. See, previously we have seen functional overloading. Now here, this is the operator overloading. It's like the assignment of more than one function to a particular operator. Now we have seen comparison operators, and we have seen assignment operators, arithmetic operators, and all, right? So what happens if I pass the function, same function, for more than one operator to a particular operator, more than one function to a particular, I mean, single operator, you're like sending two functions or same name functions or something, then what happens at that time? What does the program do? So we'll look into that as well. Yeah. So here, why classes? See, it is easy to logically group our data or functions in a way that is easy to reuse and also easy to build upon. Yeah, so this is the main reason why people use classes. Is it is very easy for us to logically group up all the elements in the sense the data members, the class variable, the data members like class variables or instance variables or any kind of methods, like anything. No, you can create a wrapper around it. You can create the class. You can create a wrapper around it so that you can reuse it again and again, and you can use it very efficiently. Clear? Yeah. So class example. So yesterday we were okay. So what we'll do is, guys, like we'll create one organization or one IT company, and we'll try to create employees into that by using this class and all. We'll take that example as an example so that you'll understand it in a perfect way. Like by looking at the example, you'll understand why whenever one employee is created, what is happening inside the class. Whenever the employee 2 is created, what is happening inside the class and all. Okay. So first we will see. Like we'll create a class called employee, and then okay, first I'll save this in our training batch with oops.py. Okay, first we'll create a class with the name employee. You can create like you can use any name to create a class. You can use capital letter in the beginning. If you don't want to use, you can use normal. It's up to you. Okay, to create a class is a keyword, and then followed by the class name, and then followed by colon. As I told you, pass is a keyword where if you don't have a particular logic and all, so afterwards you can write down the logic. So meanwhile, if you keep pass, and if you want to execute the code without any error, you can use pass here. Okay. So now I'll try to call the class. So in order to call the class, I'll take a variable, the emp1. So employee. So this is called as a instance of a class. Instance of a class. Instance of a class. See. Yeah. So class we have defined. Class variables we haven't defined yet. Wait, data members also we haven't defined it. Hold on. And see, instance. So the calling of the class is called as an instance, one particular instance. That means emp1 is a instance. Emp1 is an instance of the class employee. Again, I'm telling you, again, I'm repeating it. emp1 is an instance of the class employee. So if I want to create another instance, I'll take a variable and yeah, I'll use like this. Okay. See, now the objects are created for emp1 and emp2. Okay. Now you can pass the data members like this. emp1 dot name, for example. I want the employee one name to be as Rajesh, and emp1 dot phone. I want the phone number to be saved. Okay. emp1 dot email. Okay, for example. So likewise you can create address as well or whatever. So these are called as the variables which you are sending inside them, right? So these are called as instance variables. Now see the name, the phone, the email for this particular instance emp1, right? Yeah, so see the definition of sorry, yeah, so instance variables, a variable that is defined inside a method and belongs only to the current instance. See, that's what. See, so instance variables we have created, and see the name, the phone, and email are the instance variables, and they belong to this emp1 class only, the current instance. Okay, now I'll execute this as well. See, it has executed without any errors. If I want to print out the email for emp1, I'll use emp1 dot email. Okay, see, I got the email. Now after executing everything, it saves the emp1 saves the email id in this instance variable email. And if I want to call that instance variable, I use the dot notation. That's what I have mentioned in the first definition. See, accessed via dot notation. So in this way you can access the instance variables by using the dot notation. You can access the instance variables. Yeah, you're good. So that's how you can create instances of the classes, or you can send the data members into the classes in this process. And if you want to access the data members or the methods, we haven't come across the methods yet, but yeah, if you want to access these data members and all, simply use dot notation emp1 dot email. Hold on again. Guys, tomorrow onwards we'll have the class at is 5 okay with you, everyone? Because this vendor guy is coming daily at between the 6 and 7.
Sir,
Sir,
at
we
5
have
o'clock, skill
orientation class.
oriented class will be there, sir.
How about at 7
Yes,
then?
sir.
7
4:30
is
to
good.
5:30.
Okay, 4:30 to 5:30. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
okay? 4:30 to 5:30?
Yes, sir. It's oriented class, sir.
Okay, it's orientation class, huh? Okay. When does the orientation classes finishes?
4:30 to 5:30, sir.
No, how many classes are left?
Yeah.
1 month training, sir.
Three to four.
Okay. So someone like tell me the date when the orientation classes end, After that we can plan. Okay, fine.
June
Okay.
16th, sir. July
June,
16th, sorry.
July 16th. Huh? Okay, fine. Okay, so yeah, so we have created instances of the class, and now if I want to pass some data members into this what do we call the class for emp2 instance, I'll simply give this emp2 dot phone. Okay, in the same way I'll use this. Okay, yeah. So now I have created another instance of the class with the name emp2, and I'm sending the data members or the instance variables into the class by using dot notation. Same process. See? Okay, so this becomes a manual work for us, right? Suppose, for example, if I want to fill more details of an employee, I need to every time I need to write dot notation for each and every time whenever I'm creating the instance, right? Each and every time when I'm writing, when I'm creating an instance, I need to write the data members each and every time. So that's very hard for me. It becomes more complex and it's a time consumption process and all, right? It's a time consumption process and all.
Sir,
Yeah.
here we can use loops, for loop, while loop, like that, sir.
Okay, if you use loop and if you want to send, that's fine. But see, so we won't get data like 10 tons of data at a time, right? So how many employees do you think is going to join in the company? Suppose think like this, daily one if he's joining, what is the use of for loop then? I mean, we can use for loop, yeah, as you told, but yeah. So instead of using for loops and all, no, there is other concept in classes, so which is called as constructors. So you might have heard about the term constructor, right? Okay. So
Okay, sir.
before that, see, if I print emp1, so yesterday we have seen this. So employee is the class now. See, employee is the class, and its object emp1 is stored at this particular position. Okay. So what if we use constructors? Okay, how to use constructors and what is a constructor? Let us see. Okay, constructor. So a constructor is a special method that is used to initialize a newly created object. See, initialization, right? So to initialize a newly created object, we use constructors, and it's called just after the memory is allocated for the object. That means whenever you're creating an instance of the class, the memory is allocated for that object. Immediately, the values, whatever are there, it initializes those values into the class immediately. At that point, now we use constructors. By using constructors, now, so it's very easy for us to send or to send some data into the class and all easily, instead of writing emp1.name, emp1 dot every time. If you want to create data members for that current instance, particular instance, now it becomes it becomes very difficult for us. What if we have more than 10 to 20 data members? Then we can't type every time, right? Yeah. So for that, at that time, the constructors will help us. They come in handy actually. Okay. So overview. So we use init function inside the class. So in order to create a constructor, we use init in Python, which creates a constructor. It initializes the values. That's what a constructor is. So when if you want to initialize the values inside a class, we will use init function inside the class. Now, if we create methods inside a class, they receive instance as the first argument, right? Yeah. So whenever you are creating any method inside a class, so they receive instance as the first argument. Instance in the sense employee, emp1 equal to employee. Whenever you're calling that, it sends the data into the class. That means the instance whatever you're creating now, the instance data points, everything will be sent to the method, any method. Okay. We'll see. Okay. Now what I'll do is I'll take these all out, and instead of pass, use df init. Now I'm creating a method. Remember, I'm creating a method now. Okay. Yeah. So while creating any method inside the class, I said like at the initialization point, definitely you need to send the instance into that particular method. If not, the class will not work. Okay, remember. So let us see. So that's why we use self for instances. Okay, in order to store that instance, we use a keyword, certain keyword called self. Okay, self followed by the parameters what you want to save, like the name I want to save, and phone I want to save, comma email. These three, we are maintaining these three, right? Self, name, phone, email. Self, the instance will be sent into the self, name, phone, email, later on we'll assign the values from the instance to this particular arguments. So how to assign the values of name, phone, email from the instance inside this method? See, self dot name equals to name. Okay, self dot phone equals to phone. Self dot email equals to email. Okay, see, so that's why we use self for instances. We can call whatever we like, but self is a good way of representing instance inside methods. Okay, so you can give any name you want, like self is, instead of self you can name anything, but universally people use self only, so we also better use self, for it's a good way of representing. Okay, after self we can write what other arguments we require. Those arguments are called as data members. Okay, so these, the name, email, phone, whatever are there, those are called as data members now. Okay, example, see, these are example now. Okay, okay, so now what happens is, so previously we were writing emp1.name, right? Now this self will act as emp1. So if you're calling emp1 instance, emp1 self will act as emp1. So emp1.name equal to some name we have given, emp2.name equal to some name, I mean emp1 dot phone, some phone number we have given, right? So there, we are not using it dynamically, we are creating it manually. Now we have converted that into dynamic by using this self keyword. So this self will have that instance, emp1 instance. Okay, good. So now what I'll do is I'll execute this class. Yeah, class has executed perfectly. And now in order to pass the values into the employee class, simply type the order of the arguments which you have given here, the name, phone, and email. Okay, see, okay, now what happens is, I'll copy this, sorry, I'll execute this emp1. Now emp1 is the instance, self will have this emp1, emp1 dot name is equals to name, we have already, I have shown you in a manual way. Now what happens is it automatically assigns that self as emp1, and it saves the data, entire data, the name, phone number, and email in the form of an object at a particular position. And then whenever we want the values of that particular instance, you can call it. It's that simple. Okay, see, I have executed it perfectly. Yeah, now emp1 dot email I would like to call. Okay, see, it has given me the email. So previously we have written emp1 dot email equal to email. Now we haven't written that. Okay, so in the same way, so you can now assign any n number of instances to that particular class. Okay, you can assign a number of instances to that particular class. Okay, so I'll change the name. I'll change the number, and I'll change the mail. Yeah, so now emp2 is another instance. Inside the self, emp2 will be there, and emp2's emp2 data, whatever the data is there, it stores. It stores perfectly. Now you have emp1 data and you have emp2 data as well. That means emp1 is stored, emp2 is stored, and whenever you want to access those employees, emp1 or emp2 data and all, you can simply type emp1 dot Rajesh, sorry, name, emp1 dot phone, or emp1 dot email, whatever the values you want, you can directly call them. Okay, yeah. So we have given the emails manually here, but what happens in a company? In a company, we have the domain name, right? Suppose if you're working for Infosys, you'll get the email ID as rajesh@infosys.com, or Rajesh first name and the last name @infosys.com, right? So we'll do that. I'll show you that as an example, and we'll execute it. Okay. So for that, we'll use first name and then followed by last name. I'm changing the parameters, guys. Check clearly. And we'll use a salary, another parameter here, and here self dot first name equals first name, self dot last name equals last name, self dot phone equals phone, self dot salary equals salary. Yeah. So whenever you join any organization, automatically your email ID is created based upon your first name and last name. The HR people, what they do is they type the entire information in the system. So automatically with that particular name, so the admin people will create that email ID for you. So but the email will be automatically generated based upon your first name and last name. Okay. So how they do it? See, I'll use self.email. So email I am not giving it, right? So I'll use self.email. So now here what I will do is I'll use first name dot last name plus @ domain, or we call domain, any company. It might be Infosys, or it might be HCL, or it might be Deloitte, anything. So domain.com. Okay. Now we'll create instances of the classes, 2 instances, and we'll see whether the email ID is getting generated or not automatically. Okay. So I've given first name as Rajesh, and now I'll give the last name as Chaudhary, and the phone number and salary. Okay, since you're joining as a fresher, let us say 15,000. That's the current pay. And for Rajesh, yeah, I'll use the same example, but I'll change the names. I mean that we are changing the data for the second instance. Naveen Kumar. Okay, and we'll pay 25,000. Okay, yeah. So now let us see. I'll execute the entire class and the instance of the classes as well completely. So now we have the data members ready, and we have initialized our data members into the particular variables, whatever we want to store. Okay. So now what I'll do is emp1.email. I'll type it. I'll execute it. See, so it has automatically created an email with the first name and the last name @ domain.com. See, so now if I want emp2, what is employee 2's email ID? See, it is neatly storing everything in the form of objects, and it is getting stored in a memory, right? So you can call it anytime. You can call it anytime for any instance. If you create a number of instances, also you can call it anytime you want. Okay, so that's how you can create a constructor. That's how you can create classes. That's how you can call the classes. I mean, that's how you create the instance of classes, and this entire process is called as instantiation. Okay, and yeah, so see, previously we were writing emp1.name, emp1.email. Now we have eliminated that problem, right? Now it's very easy for us to create n number of instances within no time, right? It depends upon us now. Whatever the logic you want, you do it inside the class. But in order to create constructor, definitely if you need to initialize the values, right? For initializing the values, definitely you need to use the init keyword followed by self, and then first name, and then last name, and then phone, and whatever the arguments you want. Now that many arguments you can give it there. Okay, yeah. So that's how. Okay, so this is done. Yeah, so those arguments are called as data members. Okay, I'll go the example here, the same thing. So employee, we have initialized the values, and we have created the mail ID, emp1, this is instance we have called, and then whatever the first name, last name you want, you can use it there. Okay, see, the above code combines first
Sir,
name and last name.
sir,
Yeah, please. Yeah, please tell me.
sir, it's also possible for editing the data, sir.
Yeah, editing also you can do it. That means it's just right overwriting the data and all, right? Simply, okay. If you want to update anything, now, like you need to create a different method now. Here, okay. Suppose if you want to editing instance overwrite the data and all, right? Okay, emp1.email equal. I'll type emp1.email equal to no1 @nodomain.com. Okay. See, I've used it. So now if I print emp1.email, see, the data has been changed right in the memory. Now whenever you call emp1.email, this email ID you'll get it instead of that. So you can overwrite the data also. It's up to you. Like you can, if that's what, so manually if you want to overwrite it also, you can simply give the name of the data member, whatever you have, you name it and then use the dot notation, and to which class, to which instance you want to change, use that instance name. That's it. Instance name dot followed by the data member name equal to, you give the value. That's it. Is that clear?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay, good. So combining the attributes. See, so the format statement works, in the formatting of a string, of a particular print statement and all. Like format in the sense, yeah. So if you keep placeholders inside this print statement, for example, so inside the placeholders are empty here. So if you want these values to be assigned here, we use this format syntax and then followed by whatever the values you want. Now, if there are two placeholders, give two values here. Automatically, the first name and the last name will be printed out directly. Okay. For that, what we'll do is we'll create a different method. We'll look that as an example. Okay. I'll give name for it. Okay, I'll use self. I told self is the first thing. If you want to send data into other methods and all, you use this instance like self. Okay. So we'll use the print. Okay. I'll use two placeholders followed by dot format of. Okay, so what we use, self dot name, self dot first name followed by self dot last name followed by self dot last name. Okay, sorry, I got a message. Yeah, fine. Okay, so so if I execute this program, the class perfectly, and yeah, I have the instances now. So in order to access the data members, we know how to access it by emp1.email, right? In the same way, if you want to apply a method to our instance, okay, first we'll execute this emp1, perfectly executed. And if I want the method name to get executed, I'll use name here. Okay, if I execute the program like this, so it just shows me the object where it is stored and all. So if you want that name logic to be executed, use parenthesis. See, so now I have created a method which will return me, or print at least, which will print me the first name and last name together, right? So now I have a method where I can know the employee name, the full name of the employee, by just simply giving the method name to my instance. emp1 is the instance. So for this, the syntax is hashtag instance dot followed by method name. Okay, is that clear, guys? Yeah, so that's how you can create methods inside classes. I mean, different methods, you can create them actually. Okay, yeah, and the above code combines first name and last name. Yeah, we already seen it. We can do this by adding a method in the class too. Yeah, you can add a method also. If you don't want to add, you can simply simply see. I'll just take this print statement. I'll just paste it here. Simply, if I want, I can employee object has no attribute first name. See the error it has thrown us, first name and then followed by last name. Okay, I print it. It will print me the values actually. See, Rajesh showed it has printed me. But you can create methods also. Like instead of printing like this, now create a method, like neatly organize it properly, and you can perform your operations. Okay, we can do this by adding a method in a class too. If we don't use self, we get an error like one positional argument given. The instance is automatically assigns to the method, so that's why we need to use self. Okay, I told you, like if you don't use this self, let us see what will happen. First, we'll execute this. We'll execute this, and emp1.name. If I execute this, see, name takes 0 positional arguments, but 1 was given. So that's what there in the PPT. So definitely inside the classes, if you want to pass the values and all, you need to send this self, the instance, you need to pass it into different methods. If you need instance to be there, okay, I mean, definitely you need to use this self. If not, it will throw you the error. Okay, the instance is automatically assigns to the method, so that's why we need to use self. So we can call a method in this way also, class name dot method name of instance. Okay, Okay, so in order to call, I mean, in order to we have executed this by using emp1.name. You can call the method in a different way also. The first one is class name, that is employee dot method name. We have the method name, and then followed by emp1. Emp1 is the instance of my class. See, okay, I need to execute this program, right? Yeah, yeah, done. See, so you can call uh, like this also. So the methods and all, whatever the methods you want to call from the class, na, you can call with these syntaxes. The first syntax is instance dot method name. The second syntax is class name dot method name of the instance. Clear? Yeah. Okay. That's it for today's guys. Like we are good for today. So yeah, work on this classes and objects. Like take the same example and you try to do it. Okay.
Sir, to
Sir, could
Okay.
execute
you send the
If you
PPT?
sorry,
Could you send the PDF, sir?
I'll send the PDF. Okay. I'll send the PDF.